I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And 1C is the agenda. Any items to add to the agenda? Okay, we'll move forward with the agenda as published. Next item is recognition of visitors in the public forum. Julia was here, and Sky's not here yet, right? Okay. If you want to step up to the podium, again, up to 5 minutes, and please no personal attacks.
Hi, I'm Julia. Okay, there we go. It says it's on now. Okay. Hi there, I'm Julia, and my friend Skylar, who is supposed to be here, is a transgender student who just moved here recently to Becker. And a month ago, there was a presentation made about transgender students, and there were a lot of remarks about how they didn't know any transgender students in the neighborhood. Therefore, we would like to introduce ourselves. The group you're about to meet compiles of students who are completely out, students who are still in the process of coming out, and those who have to hide ourselves because of the unfair treatment directed towards transgender students in Becker. I'm student A. I don't feel safe at my school. Words said to me consist of slurs, misgendering terms, and blatant insults on my identity and character regarding my identity. I'm student B. I've been misgendered and dead-named by many people, including specific teachers. When this happens to me, there is little to no defense. I feel singled out, and I feel like I have nobody to help me in the school system. I am student C. I live in an unaccepting community. Unacceptance comes in many forms, but having a group present misinformation by individuals with no credentials on things that do not involve board action speaks volumes about the unacceptance in this community and in this school. It highlights my peers and myself in this community, and it sheds a dim light on us, making us feel unsafe. I am student D, and I believe teachers need to have intensive training on how to provide a safe environment to every student in their classroom. In most cases, they might not know how to do that. They need help from people who actually have credentials in this matter. We asked for this well over a year ago, and it has not happened yet. I'm student E, and we want to know if your new knowledge outweighs the harm it dealt to the children and to the children of the school and their parents. These statements show that toxic culture has been built in Becker. The only way for LGBTQ+ students to have a safe and healthy environment is for the board and faculty to stand by these students as they should for all students. Please remember that children should not be put in the middle of adult issues, meaning we need to make Becker a place where acceptance and caring for others is the standard. LGBTQ+ students need vocal support and action. Unless this is taken, it is putting students at risk for bullying, harassment, mental health problems, and many more issues. Lastly, please remember people from the LGBTQ+ community are our neighbors, our teammates, classmates, coworkers, and humans, no matter what the gender or sexual orientation is. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I am Heidi Nissler. I'm the Director of Special Education for the Sherburne and Northern Right Special Education Cooperative, which includes Becker Schools. And I'm really excited to talk with you tonight about the special ed services that are provided here in Becker, and then some of the unique programs and services that are offered through the co-op that Becker is a part of. So just a few points that I'm going to cover tonight is a little bit about who is the Sherburne and Northern Right Special Ed Cooperative. The second is what we do, what services and supports do we offer to students, families, and staff here in Becker. A little bit of an overview about funding, and then just some next steps with where we're going as an organization within the co-op to make sure we are meeting the needs of students, families, and staff here in Becker. So a little bit about who we are. The co-op is actually a separate school district recognized by the Minnesota Department of Education. The co-op is School District 6090-52, like Becker is District 726. The co-op also is recognized as a separate school district, and that's because we offer some specialized programming for students that are enrolled as co-op students. There are 3 districts within the co-op as of July 1st last year. So the districts that we serve are Becker, Big Lake, and Monticello. Previously, there had been a 4th school district, St. Michael Albertville, and I came to speak to the board last spring, I think almost about a year ago, because with STMA withdrawing and becoming independent, the co-op was transitioning to a co-op that had 3 member districts. And we've done a lot of work over the last year, and we'll continue to look towards the future. So just some key numbers that I thought were pretty interesting. When you combine all of the students enrolled in our 3 districts, we serve almost 10,000 students. And we have over 1,800 students who receive special education services. Within our 3 districts, that's about 17% of the students enrolled in our districts receive special education services, which is a little bit higher than the state average. But I do believe part of that is the reputation that our districts have within this region. We do receive, especially for our co-op programs that are physically located in Monticello, we do have families choose to open enroll to our districts because of the strong programming that we have in place. Some key numbers here in Becker. Becker has around 2,800 students, and almost 500 students receive special education services. Most of those students receive special ed services right here in Becker from early childhood up through high school, and that's about a little over 17% of students in Becker. So this is, again, a little bit higher than the state average. One area that we have noticed for Becker is the early childhood staff into primary are very good at recognizing possible delays for students. And so we identify students early here in Becker to make sure that they are getting those services at an early age, whereas sometimes students might not, in other districts, might not start receiving those services till later. So that's one difference that we've noticed in Becker, is we're identifying students early, which is something that we want to see. We want to make sure our students are getting services as early as possible. And just a little bit of information, why be part of a co-op? We've done a lot of work over the last 2 years really trying to fine-tune what is it that the co-op offers. I think one of the biggest advantages to a school district is the financial savings that can come through being part of a cooperative. There are certain services and programmings that every district has to offer, whether you are a district that serves 500 students or 30,000 students. And by being a cooperative, we are able to pool resources between our 3 school districts, so you are getting just enough service and just the right amount of programming for those highly specialized programming that would be more expensive if you were not part of a co-op. So we make sure that you receive all of the services that you need, and we offer some high-level professional development opportunities to staff and administrators throughout the year. One thing that we're proud of is we are continuing to think outside the box and really be responsive to what each of our districts need, and so we are starting to explore some services outside of special education as well. So governance is an important consideration within our cooperative organization. We have 2 bodies that help us with the governance in the co-op. The first one is the Superintendent Advisory Council, which is the superintendents from each of our 3 districts. So Superintendent Schmidt represents Becker on that committee. And then we also have the governing board, and Chair Swanson is now the representative from Becker Public Schools. He was able to be at a meeting last week and tried to get him caught up as quickly as possible. And the governing board is the body that votes on the budget. They'll vote on the staffing. So similar to how you operate as the school board for Becker, the governing board fulfills some of those same responsibilities for the co-op. And a little bit about what we do. This is kind of the fun stuff. This is where we get to work with kids. A majority of what we do is oversee and provide all of the special education services. So even the special ed services that are provided here in Becker, the co-op helps provide leadership and training for the special education staff here. We support with all instruction. We assist with the MTSS systems that Becker had in place. We have co-op school psychologists who work very closely with MTSS. We also help complete evaluations and IEPs for students. And then we also work with finance. I work closely with Kevin behind the scenes, making sure that the budgets are all in line, and also pretty active legislatively with advocacy for our districts. And then we work with parents to resolve any disputes that we may have. Most of what I do seems to be grounded either in finance or legal issues, and so the federal government sets the floor for special education services. They'll create the rule. The big law is the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act. That kind of set the stage for special education, and then the state also creates a statute. One trend that we have seen is that Minnesota goes in some areas very far above and beyond what is required per the federal level, including some areas that seem to be impacting some of the choices that parents may have for the education of their child. So those are some of the areas that I try to connect with our legislators to advocate for. And then in special education, there's always a lot of case law that we are trying to stay up to date about. Every couple of years there seems to be a new case that goes to either the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals or the U.S. Supreme Court. And one of the most important things I feel like I do to support Becker is make sure that I am up to date with all the legal happenings to ensure that looking out for the rights of our students and families, but also for the district as well. So some services that we offer. All of the special ed administration is through the co-op. We also have school psychologists who are really tightly entrenched here in Becker schools. They are on site every day. We also provide a lot of the specialized services. So students who may be deaf or hard of hearing will have an audiologist or a DHH teacher. We have ASL interpreters. We have occupational therapists, physical therapists. So a lot of those specialized services are through the co-op. One thing that's really neat that I think a lot of families might not realize exist is there are services for children starting as young as days old. From birth through kindergarten, families are eligible to receive services if their child has a developmental delay and meets a certain threshold. And so from ages birth to 2, we have a program, our early intervention program, that has home visitors. So there are school staff that will go into homes with families to help them learn strategies and skills to support the development of their young child. And I think that's often a service that families don't know exists, and it is free. So that's something that we're trying to get the word out to, especially as we continue to recover from the pandemic and continue to move forward. We want to make sure that families know what resources are available to them. We also have other specialized programming for students who need a smaller setting or a more intensive program than could necessarily be offered within a school building here. We have some students who need a program that is only 2 or 3 students in a really specially designed space, and that is where they're able to make the most progress, and we are proud to offer some of those programs for students who need that. We have several students who have been attending those intensive programs in Becker, and it's exciting to see them acquire skills to be successful in school and then be able to transition back. And we've had several students transition back to Becker this year, and it's really neat to see them gain so many skills where now they are successful in this type of setting. And we also offer special ed programming for students after their senior year of high school. Some students are eligible for services until they're 21. And so again, just trying to make sure that from birth through 21, we offer a full continuum of services for students with disabilities here in Becker. Special education funding, I'm sure that Kevin knows a lot about special education funding, and I'm sure at times you've heard different things. Because it's separate school district, there is some different funding pieces with the co-op, and there's also special education funding that comes directly to Becker as well. Some of the high-level funding pieces that we look at are federal grants. All public school districts receive federal funds that flow to the co-op, but then we flow them back to Becker schools, and we work with Kevin and Jeremy to determine how we're going to use those to support our students with disabilities. We also have our state special education aid, which is a complex system, and the funding we receive does not cover the full cost of what it costs to provide special ed services. And then similar to Becker, co-op also receives compensatory aid, and then there's a few other types of aid that we receive as well that are specific to programming for students with disabilities. Like I said, so here in Becker, the special ed funding that you would receive that we communicate very closely with your business manager about are the federal funds that flow in, that the co-op will flow many of that directly back to Becker schools for you to use with your staff for your students. Becker also receives state special education aid, and like I mentioned, there is a cross subsidy. So cross subsidy is the difference between what it costs to provide special education services and the actual revenue that a district receives. And the gap continues to get larger and larger and larger across the state, and it is one of my top priorities when I meet with legislators and other elected officials as well, is to advocate for additional funding to target that cross subsidy, because anything that isn't covered by special education aid has to come from the general fund, which is not what we like to see. And even last week I had conversations with Chair Swanson about continuing to advocate for that. And then Becker Schools also receives some third-party billing revenue, which is for health-related services. We never bill private health insurance, but the state does require us to bill medical assistance if that's what a student has. It never impacts a student's eligibility or maximum aid that they would ever receive for MA. And then we're going, as we have transitioned to a co-op with 3 member districts, we have a new logo that is official as of last week when we had our governing board meeting. The waves have the colors of our 3 member districts, and the river and the waves represent the river that ties our 3 districts together. And then we are just really focusing on collaboration between our 3 districts, really trying to identify what are our needs and how can we work together to make sure that we're meeting those needs. One thing that we are offering is a grant writer. The co-op is going to have a part-time grant writer to help each of our 3 districts write grants. And this is not specific to special education, but we are looking to try to maximize any revenue that we can for each of our 3 districts. So as soon as this person's on board, we are going to be working with your district leaders to identify any grant opportunities and submit grants on your behalf. And then starting this summer into early fall, we're going to be doing some strategic planning as a co-op, so looking at special education, but then also broader, and just what can we help support for student achievement? Are there other ways that we can help our organizations operate more efficiently? And then how can we be supporting safe and welcoming environments for all students and all of our staff? And then the conclusion is my contact information, but just a little bit of an overview.
Heidi, can you just tell us again how many staff members are in that special ed district? Yeah, so in the co-op itself, I have about 90 certified staff who are some of the service providers, but then also teachers in those specialized programs. And we have about, I'm trying to think off the top of my head, I believe it's about 60 to 70 non-licensed staff, which are either paraprofessionals, ASL interpreters.
We have several students who are blind, so we have somebody who specializes in Braille, and so altogether we have over 150 staff members just for the co-op itself.
And I'll have a committee report on the special ed co-op as well, so just to add some more of those pieces, but I wanted you guys to understand. So, you're officed in Monticello?
Yep, I'm officed in Monticello. Across the 3 districts, there are 13 schools. I try to get out and about as much as I can, but my main office is in Monticello, attached to their district office.
Other questions from the board members? You're thinking, Ryan.
I guess my only comment, being a numbers guy, is the funding for special ed and how it ebbs and flows and all that. I don't even have my head around it. So to even try and come up with a question to, just like I know we have special ed pairs here, how that correlates to, is that part of the co-op? Is that part of Becker Schools? How do we tie that all together? How do we make sure that we are getting all of our dollars accounted for? We're not overspending, we're not underspending. Every kid gets what they're supposed to get, so on and so forth, if that makes any sort of sense.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So every year, kind of following the same budgeting and planning cycle that you have here in Becker, the co-op helps lead that for our co-op programs, but then also for special ed services in each of our districts. And so I have a special education coordinator. Her name is Steph. She works full-time here in Becker. And so she is here every day. Her office is in the district office just next door here. And so what we do is we look at every building, every student. We know the names of all of the students here in Becker. We know what services they receive. And so we're always projecting and double-checking, making sure that we have the teachers, the speech pathologists, the paraprofessionals, and almost all of the staff that work here in Becker within special education are employees of Becker. The only exception where services would be provided from the co-op are Steph, who's the special education coordinator, and some of those really specialized related services. The occupational therapist, the teacher for students who are deaf and hard of hearing, physical therapist, just because Becker, due to its size, it would be inefficient for you to have one of each of those people yourself within the district. And so what we do is every year and throughout the year, about every quarter, every trimester, we are checking to see how many students need each of these services from the co-op. And if the number of students who need that service in Becker goes up, I reallocate and shift my co-op staff to provide more service here in Becker. Or if a service, or if, for example, there was a couple students who received a lot of that related service that moved, and so if there's a need that goes down, I reallocate that so Becker is not paying for services that they don't need. Does that kind of hit at what you were?
I think so, yeah.
And in the end, as we go through the year, we fund a certain portion. If there's monies remaining left over, that comes back to us as well. So there is monies kind of flowing back and forth to make sure that each of the 3 districts are paying their fair share. Right?
Yes. Yep. We look very carefully at our proposed budget, and then we also have a revised budget, but then we also have that final budget after the school year has closed, where we're really making sure that the costs line up with the actual services that Becker had received. And I think Superintendent Schmidt had said it best, if it was a year or two ago, being part of a co-op is kind of like your insurance policy, that if a student with high needs or who has a lot of service moves into your district, if a district is not part of a co-op, they may have to hire several staff to work directly with that student, whereas by being part of a co-op, the co-op has all of these services available and we can just shift. Where instead of hiring 2 or 3 staff, it may be just parts of different staff.
And I want to just mention just a little bit of my report, because I know, I mean, adding staff members is one of the pieces. And right now, you don't currently have a nurse associated with the special ed program, so that's one of the big adds for this next year.
Yeah. One thing that I had requested within my proposed budget for next year was adding a nurse for our co-op programs. And our co-op program serves students from Becker, Big Lake, and Monticello, and I have, even just in one of my elementary programs, I have 5 students whose medical needs are so high that they are so medically fragile that I have 5 students that each need a one-on-one nurse. But I didn't have a school nurse to help oversee and provide oversight to the nurses who were providing that direct care, and just really needing to make sure that we have all of the health plans and everything in place to make sure that all students are safe at school, and that staff, whether it's an employee of Becker or of the co-op, or if it's a contracted staff member, that we make sure that they have the training and the supervision that they need.
Anything else? Thanks, Heidi.
Yeah, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak tonight.
All right, we're into reports. 2A is the student report, and so first of all, I want to thank you guys for being up here at the table.
Yeah.
We will have this practice, going on for the rest of the year to make sure that you're here at the table. What that means is you have a voice in the things that we're doing. Now, you're not a technically voted member. You're like the superintendent, where you have voice but no vote.
Right.
But you guys have a voice in what we're doing. So, as we work through the issues, talk through the issues, want to make sure that you have the opportunity to contribute. So, being up here is an important thing.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Swanson.
Yeah.
So starting off, just things that have gone on since our last meeting. The juniors took their ACTs April 19th. Bad Auditions by Bad Actors held 4 performances this past weekend. The robotics team competed in the World Championship April 19th to the 22nd. Spring Fling has been under planning for a few weeks now. Boys and girls rugby season just began with their first games. The girls tied with their first game, and their most recent one, they won against Hopkins 17-0, which was their first win. The boys recently won in their last game as well. Track and field has begun their season with some meets being canceled and some being postponed because of the weather, unfortunately. And then tonight there is a youth night boys lacrosse game, so the kids will be able to go out on the field and have some fun during halftime.
All right, and then things we have happening this month in school is kind of a lot just because it's the last full month of school. On May 6th, we have a half online day, and then the next day is prom for the juniors and seniors, and then some sophomores. And then on May 16th, we have a band concert, and on May 18th is the scholarship night. And then on May 20th, Student Council is hosting the Spring Fling that we will have for the students. It'll be like a half day, and then the rest of the day after classes, we'll have fun activities for them to do and like fun snacks, just something fun for the end of the year. And then May 23rd is the choir show. The last day for the seniors is the 26th, and then the day after is graduation, which will be held at 7. And then there is no school on May 30th because I think that's Memorial Day. And then the last day of school for everybody else is June 3rd.
Are there any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Superintendent's report?
Yeah, graduation, as was noted, is May 27th at 7 p.m. And on the football field again this year. Hopefully the weather will cooperate with us. And if you'd like to participate as a board member, just let Angel know by May 13th, and then be prepared to be there by 6:30. Still waiting more news from the state legislature. The end of the session is May 21st. There's going to be quite a bit of movement and things taking place. There were a number of things last week that started moving again after the Easter break. And I think going forward for the next 2 to 3 weeks, it's going to be pretty active at the Capitol. I've been in contact with Representative Meckland on some bills and things, and again, it's going to be pretty active, and we'll continue to keep everyone updated with those types of things. The Becker Summer Academy will take place during 2 sessions. The first session is 7 days from June 7th to June 16th. And August 8th is the second session starts. To the 18th, it's 8 days for the second session. They run Monday through Thursday. The exception is June 6th because that's already a staff work day on that date, so we won't have students here on that time. So we've been able to utilize some of the federal funding from grants to provide essentially a normal school day for the students who qualify for our Becker Summer Academy. So we'll have transportation, we'll have nurses, secretaries, there's a number of staff. It's going to, I mean, they're not going to notice a difference other than there's going to be less kids in the building during that time. Teachers, support staff, the principals will be there as well. And so for both of those sessions, and we'll use federal monies to help support that because we haven't done that previously. Last summer we did a little bit, but this will be more expansive this time. And we also just received another $5,000 grant from Liberty Paper. We're going to give students who attend Becker Summer Academy, we're going to get a book or some books to leave the 2-week session with, so they'll be able to utilize that as well. Building project update. The administration, along with ICS and MLA, have had multiple meetings in the last month about safety and security and the secure entrances. ICS has also been present at some township meetings and city meetings, discussing water and sewer options for the new transportation facility on the site that's off school property here, or off the main campus here. And so they're continuing to work on that with the city and townships. And then we have staff appreciation this
Jeremy,
week.
I'm sorry, before you leave that item, I think, because I was at the township meeting that they were at, and one of the issues is that land that we own outside of town is not part of the city. And so to do sewer and water there is a little bit, it can be more expensive because it's part of the township. And so I believe that the city and township are working out that there's a possible annexation of that property into the city to allow us to get that sewer and water, you know, at a more reasonable cost. And so there's some things that still have to happen there, but I wanted the board to be aware of that potential, that they might need to work through an annexation of that land. So
we talked about that at our last meeting. They have the plans drawn up, and they had figured to go ahead with wells and septic. If they can't get the city sewer water hookup, so this is kind of they have the plan in place, and they thought, well, we're going to go meet with the city and see if we can do this. It'd be great, depending on the price of what the cost would be to hook up to city sewer and water versus the well and septic out there as it is. So not a surprise. It's just they're trying to work another angle and see if they can get that through.
Yeah.
anything else on? Because I know you guys aren't having a separate report, right?
This week is Staff Appreciation Week. We celebrate here at Becker Schools from May 2nd to the 6th. Tomorrow will be bagel and cream cheese for all staff, sponsored by the Cabinet. PTSA is doing movie star theme appreciation this week as well, and then we have social media posts for each group during the week for people to view and share and comment on as well. Any other questions on anything?
No questions on the superintendent's report? Committee reports. I have a few of them. The first one, I want to give a report as the board chair. During our special meeting on April 20th, we had kind of a brief discussion and some back and forth on the things around the March 14th meeting and some of the lessons learned. We've had this had discussion or update from the superintendent, and again, while we intend to provide fully transparent information and some additional items that we'll be going through with regard to things like security and those types of things, we can't go into additional details at this point. First of all, I want to have a full board before we go through all those things. And there's some ongoing investigations and potential disciplinary actions. And so if you have any questions, concerns, additional information to provide, you can either contact myself or the superintendent, and we will provide them that back out to the board as information. So that's just the piece from the school board chair piece and the discussion about March 14th, there will be some additional discussions and meeting, there are times during our June, July, and ongoing meetings to discuss some of those things. With regard to the Board Policies Committee that's created, and Ryan and Connie, you guys were both appointed that. That is a committee that is new for our district, and so for that, as the two board members appointed, you are free to add people to that Policies Committee, and the idea is that there are several policies and the student handbook, the staff handbook, those types of things that need to be reviewed and updated. And so that's why we created that separate committee to do that. And Connie and Ryan, you guys are empowered to get your committee together with the appropriate inputs from community, students, and stuff like that. So you guys take care of that committee. From the curriculum committee, next month we're going to have several items that will have to come for approval. There's 3 presentations coming to the June Curriculum Committee for likely presentation for approval at our June meeting. In elementary science, correct me if I'm wrong, Minda, elementary science, Phi Ed, and 6th grade math are the 3 key items that need to come because of jumbling of the curriculum, of moving it from individual grade levels. It's no longer in a specific band, but each grade level has some specific requirements, and so we will likely have to purchase some additional curriculum in order to meet those requirements and try to figure out how it's all going to fit together. We're hoping that everything kind of comes together in that piece, and again, ongoing meetings. And thanks to the staff that's putting all of that information together for the curriculum committee so it can come before the board. Also want to add that there's some new high school courses starting this next year. Specific courses in theater tech. So that's like running the booth and lighting and all of that kind of stuff, helping with scenes, all of that technical work that has to be done in the theater area. That course is starting. There's a mechanical design and fabrication. Design and development of products for potential marketing and that kind of stuff. And then, as we had the presentation for the consumer sciences piece on food courses. So there's 3, the renaming of those courses to align with the information that's being presented in those. I don't remember the names, so I'm sorry, but there's 3.
Yeah, I remember. There's like
introduction to
culinary arts, one culinary arts.
Yeah, but it could actually lead into the kind of the culinary arts, actually preparing food for catering, restaurants, that kind of stuff is a big piece of that. Again, and then 9th grade science is, again, kind of jumbling around and transition for the reorganization of science to meet the Minnesota standards because of the earth science requirements that are moving from 11th grade to 9th grade, and so some reorganization happening in that earth science area, and particularly 9th grade science. Okay. Any questions on curriculum?
So just a curiosity question. Do we offer a personal finance course?
Yes.
Yes, we do.
We do? Okay. I was just curious.
Yeah. They can answer.
Yeah.
That's good. Any other questions?
Tax preparation.
Tax prep, you're going to get some
Yeah.
some new employees for Ryan.
Yeah, you come over and see you.
There you go. Great. Other questions on curriculum? Okay, and then as Heidi presented as special ed co-op, I was there, and so we approved the logo, was one of the pieces. We approved the budget going forward. And then we also passed the funding resolution to eliminate that cross-subsidy of the unfunded mandates. The same resolution that we passed this last year, we passed at the special board, or special education co-op board as well, so that resolution also goes to the legislature, so they understand that you know, it's nice to have mandates of things that we want, that need to be done, but those need to be funded by the state and federal government. Okay. Did I miss anything, Heidi? Heidi, did I miss anything? No. Okay. Any questions on the special ed co-op? Again, I'm acting as the clerk for that co-op. Okay. Any other committee reports?
There was a finance committee meeting last week. Thursday. Thursday, that's right. We had to move it, and talking about the revised budget and upcoming budget, which I will let Kevin go into more detail later in the agenda, so we're not duplicating efforts.
Okay. Any other committee reports? Okay. Moving on to item 2D, which is a summary of the closed sessions. Per Minnesota statute, we have to come back at the next regular board meeting and summarize the closed sessions. The first part of the closed session was on the security briefing and the discussion with our school liaison officer and the Sherburne County Sheriff on the security and infrastructure of our buildings. Again, we don't go into the detail, but there are several improvements that were identified and several parts of procedures that will be adopted going forward so that we understand what the legal requirements are as far as involving the law enforcement in either within the buildings and the investigations that they do, including board meetings and so forth and so on. So that was the gist of the discussion for security, and we also talked specifically about this particular room and the available spaces within our buildings to hold large assemblies. Okay. The second item that was discussed in the closed board meeting was evaluation and review of the performance of the superintendent. Several items of feedback were given to the superintendent and requested a written plan from him that's coming back to the school board. And I believe he's at least started working on those pieces and continued ongoing effort from the superintendent for those improvements. Did I miss anything from the two closed board meetings? Okay. We're on to item 3, which is the consent agenda. Looking for a motion.
I move to accept the consent agenda, removing, which one is it? 3F, please.
Okay, so consent agenda has been moved.
I'll second.
Second by Aaron. Item 3F is removed for separate discussion. Okay. Any other items that the board wishes to discuss? Okay. The consent agenda has been moved and seconded with the exception of item 3F. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 3F.
I just was hoping that Jeremy could give more of an overview of the communication plan itself, at goals, what we're trying to accomplish with this communication plan.
Sure. Yeah, just looking at the communication plan, we were able to bring that to the cabinet and the exec committee. Myself and Michelle Peacock worked on that, brought it to the last board meeting. Did get some feedback on that. I guess the goal of it is to continue to communicate with our stakeholders, but it includes both internal and external communications. If you look at the belief statements that are in there, community members should understand the changing landscape of education to engage with, participate in, and support the educational system. Staff members should adaptable to learn new information and skills to facilitate learning with students and are prepared to thrive in an ever-changing world. Creating self-directed learners, self-disciplined and autonomous workers, while being creative thinkers with a drive for innovation, and then allowing parents to collaborate and understand the new realities of today's learning environment to model and teach self-directed behavior, lifelong learning in an environment that fosters these expectations. And so those are the beliefs of the plan. The plan does a number of different things. One of the things it does, and if you look toward the end of the plan, is creates an opportunity for us to help brand the school, utilizing the same colors, the same Bulldog logos and things like that. If you've noticed in the last year or two, we've increased the number of Bulldogs and things that are around our district, and tried to, I think at one point when we started this process a couple of years ago, we had like 40 or 50 different types of Bulldogs that were within our buildings, and so we wanted to kind of get that streamlined and get it to one, so when your people see the Bulldog and they see Becker with the Bulldog emblem, that helps kind of just draw people to our community and our school district. And then the other piece of the plan is making sure that we're continuing to communicate with specific audiences and what types of communications will be expected and take place throughout our district and throughout the school year. And that's more toward the beginning. There's target audiences and things like that are on there, in both internal, external, what types of media we're going to use to communicate those types of things. And so that is all listed in there. One of the things that I did get feedback on with the communication plan was just making sure that people had an opportunity to have an outlet if they needed to were communicated with, to maybe make a comment to the public or to the media, and some people aren't comfortable doing that. So one of the phrases we added in the plan was to ensure compliance with data privacy laws and other legal considerations. Employees may not make statements to the media, individuals, or entities outside the district relating to student or personnel matters. And then we created a chain of command with that, where inquiries regarding such matters must be directed to the directors and building administration, and then the director of community ed and superintendent will oversee this communication and may also be used as a resource on specific inquiries. And so part of the reason that language was added in was to help protect our staff from feeling like they have to make comments to media when they're inquired with, and it gives them an opportunity to kind of go out and ask for help from myself or the director of community ed or their building administrator or director. So that is in there as well.
Yeah, I guess my follow-up question would be, I see that we've got goals listed. Is there measurables that you have started to develop to know whether or not our communication plan is working? And yes or no, if no, who are the people involved that are going to help tweak the plan to make sure that we're meeting our goals?
Yeah, we don't have any specific number goals or anything like that are in the plan, but we wanted to kind of just get an opportunity to say, here's where you can expect communication from the school district, how often you can expect this communication, where it's coming from and who it's going to. I think going forward we'll continue to improve the plan, and if we get through strategic planning and one of the goals is communication that comes out of there as a district goal, having some type of measurable with that, and I think the community ed director will help with that, and our administrative team as well.
Just out of curiosity, do we have a set of branding standards that we abide by? Like you talked about having more like a uniform, I guess, advertisement of our school with like the Bulldogs and whatnot. I just know that that's something we do in robotics, and it proves to work pretty well.
Yeah, well, we just have, so some of the things that are in here are emails are going to all look the same from coming out of the district. Logo usage, the colors are all specific, and then the fonts and logos and things like that. So we don't have a plan like that, but this communication plan will kind of meet some of those needs for the branding.
Cool.
With that, I'll move to accept 3F.
Okay, it's been moved.
No, second.
Seconded by Connie. So one other thing that I want to say is that, as with everything, understand that this is the first generation of this communication plan, and we'll continue to look through, look for further improvements. One of the pieces, and the superintendent and I had a meeting just before, earlier today, before curriculum committee, but including in that maybe things like the board communication, the ability of board members in being able to respond to emails and that kind of stuff, and how that's going to happen, so that we're protected against breaking any open meeting laws, but also have more transparent communication and information exchange between us and the community. I stress that it is always open to communication, to the board members. That's why our information is posted on the school website, to be able to communicate with us. But much of the communication will likely go back through the superintendent, the administration, the director level, so that we aren't in violation of any of the statutes. Okay? Does that make sense to everybody? Any questions on that? Okay. Any other comments on the communication plan? Okay, been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I just got the blue screen of death.
Gifts.
Oh, we're on to gifts. Item 4 is gifts.
I'll make a motion to accept the gifts.
Moved by Connie.
Second.
Second by Aaron.
It's absolutely incredible what transpired with the donations for robotics. It was incredible in itself that robotics got to go, achieved worlds in itself, but actually to be able to go and represent Becker schools on a world stage is amazing. So hats off to the robotics team and our donors for being able to make that happen.
Yeah, kind of adding on to that, it really was a miracle that we rounded up as much money as we did in time. We're really grateful for our sponsors, and as somebody who went to the competition, one of the best experiences of my life. So thank you to everyone who helped with that.
And there are some carryover, because they're not even all on this month. I don't know if all the donations didn't get in on time or whatever, but some pledges that I am aware of aren't even in there yet, so there'll be more. It's even greater than what you see this month. It's incredible, and I think I put that in my notes as well. So it's remarkable. Oh, it's supposed to be
Not there yet, no. Getting there.
I was wondering, I was like, why is my computer over here?
Any more comments on the gifts? Okay. All in favor of the motion to receive the gifts, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, item 5 is the filling of school board vacancies. And so, again, the process will be that school board members would make a nomination. Make a nomination that then would have to be seconded for any of the 8 candidates that were screened at the last special board meeting. And so, with that, I'll open the floor to nominations.
Mr. Chair, I just have a question. Is it within our proxy to take a preliminary vote just to see where we could, maybe in the very first vote without nominations, be down to 4 in itself? I don't know if, being that our resolution says not, I mean, I'm fine either way, I just was curious.
I'm not quite sure what you're getting towards, but again, if there was only 4 people of the 8 nominated, then that would take us down to those 4 would be open for the ballot.
Right, I'm just curious what if somebody wanted potentially based on the two people, we end up with 5 versus 4 on a, if that's my, do we want to narrow it down to 4 right away, or see if there's, again, I'm just asking the board if that's within the proxy, if we even want to do it, or we just we pick one ourselves
And this is at our discretion to talk about that. I mean, Robert's rules kind of gives us a little bit of guidance of nominating and seconding, but it doesn't tell us that we have to narrow it down to by anything, other than again, anybody that's not nominated would not be eligible.
So a preliminary vote would just kind of be the same thing, would just take the pressure off the nomination. Is that what you're thinking?
yeah, I mean, if we put it at 1 apiece, but I really felt strongly about 2, that, I guess that's my question. Is that permissible, or are we sticking to 1 apiece? Because whoever starts, I guess there may be a consensus on that person, so we may get down to 4 or whatever, less than 8 based on nominations, if that makes sense.
So it's a really sticky spot, because we all nominated 2
we could
for interviews.
Right.
And now if we all come out and just nominate 1, now we're still at the 4. I think I see your point as far as a preliminary vote. I had suggested
Vote for 3,
that we vote for 3 right off the bat and see if there's 2 that arise from that. If you vote for 3, you obviously have to vote for somebody other than the 2 you put forward.
Right.
That would bring up another vote, so.
I'm fine with that too. I think that kind of achieves the same thing.
Okay.
I'm okay with whatever. I mean, that was just my thinking, is if we vote for 3, then even if we just put down our 2, there's obviously a 3rd vote coming out of it.
Yeah. So we'll each vote for 3.
Each vote for 3. Okay.
So this is vote 1.
Well, and again, we need to have nominations, so, the board members should nominate those that they...
I think based on what we were talking, we were going to nominate all 8 to see where it goes.
Okay. So the move is to nominate all 8 that were considered. Is there a second to that?
And see where it goes.
Yeah, I'll second. If that's the motion, I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded that all 8 people that were interviewed would be nominated for the ballot. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So all 8 are nominated, and we will vote for 3. So you can take your first ballot, your first vote.
So add a number 3 to your ballot.
Yep.
Add a number 3, and at the top, write vote number 1. I would assume everybody has the names right.
They're on the agenda for last week.
Yeah.
Minutes. So before we read those, if it comes to a tie, we're just moving the 3 or 4 that are tied forward to vote the second round. Is that am I assuming right?
Correct. Okay. And we did talk to MSBA about the way to do this and read it so that it's publicly known. They advised us to read, and that's why the names were on the ballot, our names were on the ballot, is to read who voted, and then the 3 people that they voted for.
Okay. So the first ballot is Mark Swanson. The votes are for Gwen Anderson, Troy Burning, and Sonia Cox. Aaron's vote is for Troy Burning, Pete Weissman, and Renee Riegel. Okay. Connie's vote is for Matt Kuschel, Ryan Hubbard, and Renee Riegel, right? Is it Riegel?
Mm-hmm.
And Ryan's votes are for Pete Weissman, Troy Burning, and Ryan Hubbard. Somebody tally those up for me. Let's see. 3 for Troy.
Yep. 2 for Renee, and 2 for, somebody else.
Ryan?
Ryan, yeah.
And 2 for Pete?
And 2 for Pete, yep.
Clerk?
Okay, and so Troy Burning is elected to one of the positions. He received 3 votes, which would be a majority. Okay, and so the second ballot will only include the names of, right, let me make sure I get this, Pete Weissman,
Renee
Riegel,
and Ryan.
and Ryan Hubbard. I would say, because there's only one position remaining, just vote for 2. Okay, then vote 2 on the top. Okay. First vote from Mark Swanson is for Pete Weissman and Renee Riegel. Also, Aaron Jurek votes for Renee and Pete. Ryan votes for Pete and Ryan Hubbard. And Connie votes for Pete and Ryan Hubbard, and Pete Weissman is elected to the second position.
Let's keep those 2.
Yeah. Okay. And so I will move the resolution filling the school board vacancies by appointment. And the only change to from what's in the board book is the names are added in the 4th paragraph of Troy Burning and Pete Weissman.
I'll second.
Okay. Any other discussion on the resolution? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Can I just speak to that real quick?
Yep.
Now the vote's done. I just want to thank everybody who threw their names in, and the 8th who came and presented last week. It was a very difficult choice. And when we went through those 27 names, it was, it's pretty amazing to think that there's that many people who want to sit in this spot and go through some of the things that we deal with. So I just want to personally thank everybody who put their name out and put themselves in the process to go through this. It's humbling to see that many people that were willing to step up and help out. So thank you all for doing that.
And I'll just piggyback off of that and remember that these are short-term positions. So if you are sincere enough that you want to participate in this, remember that we've got elections coming in November as well.
And again, those elections will be for two-year seats and 3 4-year seats.
Yes.
And you know, that'll be voted on in the November election. And I know I just want to add to that, because I mean, for sure, having the amount of talent and the time that was spent in putting together the presentations, answering questions, and just even putting your name in the hat with the 27 people, it is great to see that this community continues to understand the importance of serving on the school board. And thanks to all of you that put your name in, and the 2 people that we just appointed. Again, the process is that there's a 30-day waiting period, and that allows for some of the pieces on statute. If there are any questions, and a couple questions came up during the special meeting that we had about a petition and that kind of stuff, all of that information can be gleaned by contacting the county auditor's office. They are the election authority that's within our area that understands the number of people who voted and all that kind of stuff. And so even they actually are the independent party that would review any petition according to statute. And while we're part of that as well, they act as the independent review and auditing of that. And that, again, that's the county auditor's office. Okay. Any questions on that? Any other comments? Thank you to everybody. We're up to item 6, which is the second reading of the 2 policies listed.
Move to accept.
Okay, move to accept by Ryan.
I'll second.
Second by Connie. Any other discussions on those second readings? The only thing that I'll say again, as we work towards having this policy committee and looking at all these things, even these ones that we're just doing now have to be reviewed for additional improvements. Okay? And so as we move forward in understanding all of these next steps for our district, including, you know, if we need to create additional things like inclusion councils or those types of things, should have the appropriate policies behind them. Okay? With that, all in favor of the motion to adopt these policies signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, item 7 is the revised 21-22 budget. Kevin?
Okay, let's see if Jason can get it up on the screen. The first one that we're going to be looking at is the revised budget that we're currently in for the current school year, 21-22. I was there for a second. There you go. So this form, how it works is, so the top section is the general fund, and the very first line is our total general fund budget where we started the current year, so last July 1st, 2021. Then it adds in the revenues, subtracts out the expenditures, adds in some other financing sources, comes to a variance. So that's really the revenues over the expenditures. And then that gets added to the beginning fund balance, gets us to a projected fund balance. So across the top, first line, that's really the total general fund. Then from that gets subtracted out certain reserves that the state requires us to separate out. The 2 largest ones are operating capital. Those are for items like equipment, some repairs, those types of things. Things that last longer than a year. The second one is the long-term facilities maintenance. That's our repairs on parking lots, our mechanical systems, roof repairs, certain, like if lighting goes out, power goes out, it's those things. So it's maintenance. And you'll see in June, we'll come back with a 10-year plan that the board will approve in June for that. But as you can see, both of those are going up slightly. They're pretty much a break even, but they are going up slightly. One from $37,000 to $76,000 for the operating capital. The long-term facilities maintenance from $20,000 to $67,000. Then the next two sections are assigned fund balances and non-spendable fund balances. The non-spendable are really any prepaids and inventory that we have. So we have to set that aside because it really is an already expenditure that's done at the beginning of the year. And then we don't know what this next year's going to be, so we just make it the same amount. The assigned fund balances are really, there's some assigned balances within the buildings. Each of the buildings have certain things that they're doing within their buildings that get assigned to those specific items. One of them, for example, is playground fund in the primary and intermediate. So when they get donations, they go into there, it gets saved up till they have enough. They may put in a new piece of equipment in the playgrounds. Then the bottom line there, so we subtract all those from that first line and we come down to our unassigned fund balance. And as you can see, we do go up approximately $200,000. This is one of those communication things that is a percentage at the end that we're projecting at the end of the year of $3,260,000, which is a 9.7%. That way over on the right there, which does meet the board's goal of the 8% unassigned fund balance. The food service is probably the one that had the largest change, and that's mainly because when we did the budget last May approval, they only had the meals going through June 30th, and then in June the federal government extended that all the way through August 30th for the summer meals. So that was our main increase in there. But as you can see, we are going up $147,000 in that fund. The state does recommend that the fund balance only is approximately 3 months worth of expenditures. That's around $500,000. So we will be over that at the end of this year, but as you'll see, the 22-23 budget for next year, we do have plans on spending that down to around that $500,000. Community service fund, not real big changes there. There are some smaller drops in the fund balance. You'll see a $12,175 in the reserve for community ed. The reserve for ECFE is a $13,000 decrease, and then the reserve for school readiness, $20,000. And then the new one that came in, obviously, is the building construction fund because of the referendum this last fall passed and issuing those bonds in February. So obviously last May when you approved this original budget, there was nothing there. But the referendum passed, we issued the bonds, $44,396,000. We have an estimated amount that we're spending through June. Probably won't hit that much this year yet, but I'm just using the ICS's estimated payout schedules that they gave us. But you'll see next year when we go through the next year that fund balance will start going down also as we start building the different items within the referendum. Then the last fund is the debt service fund. That's our fund that collects the property taxes to repay the principal and interest on the bonds issued. The law is that we have to levy 105% of whatever our principal and interest is, so that fund balance usually will increase because we don't have a 5% delinquency rate. That's why the statute says 105%. but we don't have a 5% delinquency rate. So we're always going to have more revenue than we will expenditures in this fund.
And that plays out year over year. If I remember right, some of the conversations we've had is if it gets too much, we true ourselves up in a future year where we don't levy
Correct.
as much.
So what'll happen when I bring the next levy to you in September, the preliminary, the state will have a calculation. If that gets too large, it lowers, so it still calculates the 105%, but then they'll have an adjustment in there to lower that down to their, what we want to call it, maximum amount that we should have. There's a calculation they go through. So it would lower the taxes in the end. Still, because the statute's there for the 105%, we still have to show that, but then there's the adjustment that brings those taxes down, because our fund balances, if it grows. Any other questions on the revised for the current year, 21-22?
So that 9.7% is really just a month's worth of expenditures, a little bit more than a month.
Yeah, a little bit more than a month. That's about, whatever it'd be, 100% divided by 12. So 8% is about a month, right around 8%. Which is still minimal.
I'll make a motion to adopt the revised 21-22 budget.
I'll second.
Moved by Aaron, seconded by Tom.
Discussion? Any other discussions or questions?
Thank you, Kevin, for walking through that so thoroughly there, explaining it.
Yep, you're welcome.
Okay.
If you ever have questions, feel free to ask. That's what I'm here for.
It's so easy to understand.
Yeah.
I don't know how you can get it all on one page, to be honest.
We won't talk about the Excel file he uses to get
to get to this.
Well, and all the formulas, I understand, all of these pieces come together in finance, and it keeps to understand. Okay?
Yep.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, then the next one is really for next school year, fiscal year 22-23. It's the same spreadsheet, just different year. But what you'll have in that first column is really the projected fund balance from the previous sheet, the projected ending. Will we be right on that? No. I mean, if I could do that, I'd be a soothsayer somewhere, predicting lots of things. But you have your things, and you do your projections, and you go with them, and that's what they are. So that first column is really the projected from the end of this year. Then we have our revenues for the next year, expenditures for next year, and then the variances, which is really the revenues over or under the expenditures, and then the projected that we would be at June 30th, 2023, which is, a year and 2 months away from now. Again, it's the same setup. That first line is the general fund in total, and then you have the operating capital, long-term facilities maintenance. As you can see, they're pretty much a wash, not a large increase. The assigned fund balances, again, and the non-spendable, they all get subtracted from that first line of the total to get to the unassigned fund balance, which again is the important one for the board policy that we're looking at, the 8% minimum. You see there, it's pretty much a wash, $11,000 increase, and again, it won't end up being that. I put estimates in, and that's what you got to use, but that's what we come to. So on the general fund unassigned, we actually go down a little bit from that 9.7% we were the year before to 9.6, because it's always based on the expenditure column. You know, it's whatever that ending projected fund balance is based on the 34,069,794. So, because that base, that denominator that you're dividing it by changes, then that percentage may change too. Here you'll see the food service fund, where I was telling you, you know, we do have plans to try to spend that down so that we end up right around that 500,000, which is 3 months worth of our expenditures in the food service fund. The big change in the food service fund is that USDA, the Department of Agriculture, is ending the free meals at the end of the school year, and originally it was thought that it was going to go through June of this school year, but the USDA clarified that and said no, it's the last day of school that the free lunches are going to end. So next school year we'll start up with, as it is now, who knows politically what might change. The state does have some legislation, they might continue it, but as of now, it's ending as of next school year. So
Jeremy, does that mean we're going to be shaking down free reduced lunch applications again? If it's not free, so we got to go back to what we had previous to COVID. Is that what we're saying?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Now,
We'll try to get as many as we can, and it did go down when the free meals came in. We went from about 18% to about 14%. So 4% of the people either didn't fill it out, and I'm thinking didn't fill it out because during COVID, you know, a lot of people went unemployed. Actually, their incomes went down. You would think if they actually filled them out, we would have more people qualify.
Okay.
And we have plans to send out communications about, you know, that. Now, as soon as...
Well, and that not only affects, you know, funding of the food, but it affects a bunch of other things in the formula.
Exactly. The free and reduced count is used for many different things. One of them is compensatory. The other one is the federal funding, the normal federal funding that we get, Title I and Title II, and special ed.
Which also really affected our ESSER funding.
Yes, it did.
All of those types of things, yeah.
As Jeremy has very eloquently communicated that many times. The community service fund, those do have some decreases in them. Do plan on sitting down with the director and going through these so that if there has to be fee increases, that we would maybe try to get them incorporated before next year. And then the building construction fund, there you'll see, you know, we bring the money in from last year, the 41 million. We do get to earn some interest on those funds because, you know, we don't spend it all right now. So we actually invest those funds until we're going to spend them out. So that's why you see the revenue in there. And that's probably even a little low now that the interest rates are going up, but that's a good thing. I mean, if the interest rates go up. There is a thing called arbitrage, though. We can't earn more money on the investments than what we're paying for interest on bonds. That's what they call arbitrage. So if the rates would go, you know, way above we issued them at, what, 3.2%, I think. But if the interest rates would actually go up higher than that we could earn, then we actually have to pay that back to the IRS. And that's an arbitrage loss. And then the estimate of the expenditures, again, are off of the construction schedule from ICS of what they hope that we can get done in next fiscal year. And so by the end of next year, again, we'll still have about half of those funds available at the end of the year. And in the debt service fund, again, that's at 105% of what the bonds, principal and interest are, and what we have as revenues, 105%, and the expenditures, the actual amount. We know what those are. Any questions on next year's budget?
Do you anticipate that 800,000 debt service, are we creeping up to the point where we're gonna have an adjustment?
Yeah, they'll probably have an adjustment on that, and that'll come in this coming levy. But again, remember that the levy that you're gonna approve this fall will actually be for the 23-24 school year, so it's kinda always a little bit of a lag time because of the way the revenues are recognized, which year they're recognized for the levy.
Other questions and concerns? I do. I mean, historically, community ed, we've put money into that fund from
The last 2 years we have.
the last 2 years we put in. And
Well, we go back to the beginning when we came on 12 years ago.
it was negative, it was actually a negative fund.
Yeah.
And I know it's not good news for the community that they might have to pay more for that community ed piece, but I think it's not fiscally responsible to continue to spend that down.
I actually asked that at our meeting about the community ed. Is it time, I know that we just did a fee restructure, or revisited fees going into, I believe, this school year. Do we have to reevaluate it again, given where his proposed budget is at? That did come up in the finance committee meeting.
How often do we set community ed fees?
Well, the fees are set usually once a year. It's in July, I think. It's usually the July board meeting.
Yeah, we bring forward at that time. I'm still hesitant to do anything right now because of the COVID. It's still affecting those numbers, especially the last couple of years. I think we've got it maybe on the right track. We just don't know. I'd be hesitant again to increase those fees and then all of a sudden have a huge surplus in that account, because you're not supposed to.
It's probably in a discussion during next year, though. I mean, during next year, I think they have to look, we can give them a mid-year where you're at, how you're doing type of thing. See if they're making it, and if they're not, at least then they can start that discussion.
I mean, ideally, we'd want that to run at a zero balance.
Yeah.
Money in equals money out.
We are looking at some grant opportunities as well, for community ed type of things, so we're trying that, but sometimes our numbers don't work as well as, like that free and reduced sometimes comes into play for those types of grants and things, but we're trying to get some of that too
and one thing that is in the community service fund, we do charge them for the use of the space that they have currently. Now, we haven't the last 2 years because of the COVID. We actually had to transfer the money in. But remember, when they're in their own building, that program that'll be in that building by themselves will be the community ed. They'll have their own meter, they'll have their own water and sewer charges. I mean, there won't even be an estimate. We'll know what it costs to be in that building.
Well, and I think we have a little bit more of a cushion with the ECFE and school readiness, but community ed has been a continual thing that Aaron and I, like I said, have seen recurring. So just watch that. Okay. Take a motion to approve the proposed budget.
I'll move to accept.
Okay. Brian?
I'll second.
Second by Aaron. Any other discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Item 9 is strategic planning.
Yeah, and just, these dates, are dates I sent out in one of my updates. Looking at these, I just wanted everyone to be aware of these dates. We may look at switching that first listening session, date, so we can get more information out, because those will involve, people throughout the district and community. But we want to kind of get started on this fairly soon. At our Sherburne Northern Right Special Ed Co-op meeting, we talked about strategic planning, but we also talked, Big Lake has started this process as well, 2 weeks, last week?
This last week they started.
Yeah, just recently, and so, yeah, and so I'm glad they're doing it first in a neighboring district, and I communicate with Superintendent Jimbach quite a bit, and so we, you know, we can learn from some of their things that happen as well. But any questions on these dates? I guess there's no need for a vote or anything like that, but.
So the process, when it talks about 5 sessions during the day and early evening, are those targeted groups, like students, staff, that kind of stuff? Is it targeted for specific groups?
Yep, but there also is opportunities for others if the time works better for them to participate, but they'll try to do like the staff ones during the school day and things like that, the internal audiences, and then the external side of it after school. But if my understanding was if there's a time that works better for somebody, they can still get put into that pool, I guess, or that group
right.
From that. And then
And these are open to school board members as well?
Yes, yep. And then starting on June 1st, that'd be a narrower set of people that would be participating in that. So once we identify people from the listening sessions, from the surveys, we would have a small group of 40 to 50 people that would be on that. Hopefully, ideally 40 to 50.
And these sessions are in person, remote, combination?
Combination, yep. So one of the questions I do need to check on that I just thought of just later today was since the board is going to be there, they're all available virtually, but I have to check now if the board has to be here. At least a quorum of the board has to be here and be open to the public, or if you guys can all do it from your house or wherever it is. And we'll have 6 board members at that time. We're really close to that time, so I'm going to do some checking on that, and then I'll update the board on that. But it will be public via virtually, so anyone can see that. We'll post it because we'll have a majority of the board.
So these dates, it is a board-required meeting.
Yes.
June 1st will not be available.
Those are the right dates. Yeah, because we were on Tuesdays, weren't we? And then we switched it to Wednesdays, yeah. Okay.
So just,
and that's fine.
Just let you know, I got an away baseball game, so I will not be in town.
Yeah, as long as most of the board is here. And again,
we moved into Wednesdays to avoid your baseball schedule.
Well, at this time it was.
If it rains, we're good.
if it rains, we're good.
All right.
I scheduled on the 20th, and for away games, I had certain days I could pick, and
I think one of the key, because the first sessions are really listening sessions, and it's important to be there to listen, but there isn't any action, summary, kind of moving forward until that last session that's currently scheduled for the 14th of July. And so that's where we start, formulating the goals and objectives. And remember, that is a board policy that gets adopted for those goals and objectives. And so, again, it's important to be there and listen, and again, they'll be recorded, so you can come back and listen to them. But it's important to be there to listen so that we understand, that input of where that came from as we move through the goal setting process, right? Okay. Any other questions on strategic planning? And those will be publicized and links available to the appropriate input pieces. Okay? Any other items?
Negotiations, I forgot during committees. 284. Beautiful. Yep, so we sent out a doodle poll to the, committee members for negotiations with 284. I just popped in my head just now, I remembered that, so. So we'll.
Haven't had a chance to look at my.
Yeah, but we'll start those within the next month or so, I guess. So the next board meeting, there may be an update with that.